relevance of the topic. So here at your signal. So thank you very much. So far, so good. The event has been such a hit, and we brought so many topics from the private initiatives. Many of those topics involve in-depth digital ecosystems and how they have created new business verticals. And I'm not referring only to technology, that is new technology, and I mean new processes and even new ways of working. We are really diving into this third industrial revolution that will impact and has already impacted our life constantly, and our consumption habits prove that. Today, I just want to go to a store and it's turned it into an experience center, and we see new business models, for instance, crypto. Where should we have some cryptocurrency being invested in terms of a community? So many things have been transformed, and working from home, for instance, and that's obvious. But what we are really missing is a discussion about city ecosystems, where the impact on citizens is higher and where they complain, and that involves how the public powers, by using new tools, can be a partner in this process. Because as much as many digital companies that have been present here, and they talk about scale, like we have to build a business that will impact thousands or even millions of people, then the public power is born with this scale challenge, because we have millions of people involved, because nobody can be left aside of this process. And private companies can say, okay, I need to improve my management, and I will shrink my staff, and my target public is A. And sometimes the public power should not do that. The government must include people and not exclude them. And now we have to think about new tools and how the public power can be such a partner of innovation. And I talked to Humberto at the Web Summit at Lisbon, and he brought us a tool that is unknown so far from the greater audience. And surprisingly enough, it's also not familiar to technology companies, which are the most interested parties in this process. But before getting into the real deal, we would like to hear from Humberto. I mean, please introduce yourself and talk about the potential that your agency has in these technology contexts. And I would also ask you the same thing here, to introduce yourself, so that we can provide you with an overview about what is new about the public power. Yes, I'm not spending too much time because we have a very rich presentation afterwards. And I'm Humberto Silva, and I'm Deputy Secretary of Technology. And my greatest challenge, and I am a researcher at the University of São Paulo, and since last December, I became responsible for this role, and our mayor assigned me this task, and he asked me to be here and to work at the office of the local government to develop our tools. And we are addressing realities of a sector that need to have institutional support, and this is a challenge that we used to have. And looking for those tools, the existing tools, which are not familiar to most people, we then created a group that pioneer this innovation milestone, and how we what we are doing to normalize that and standardize that in the city of São Paulo. This is what we are going to talk about here, and we are just getting you through this overview, and we'll show you how this entire ecosystem is all about, and the three pillars of this entire initiative, so that we can have support of all the innovation chain steps, so that it becomes a mature product and be able to get to the market. And as a great customer, and the role of this consumer in this igniting process, and as an actor in this process, and also as a customer in this innovation process. I mean, the public power. And so that this process can be scalable. And now I pass the floor to Alex Gouveia, who is also an expert. He has already worked with that a lot, and he will tell us what is the work that he has done throughout these years. And we've met recently, and we are developing this innovative work not only at the local government, but in a unique way because of the magnitude of the project that we have in our hands, but also by using this model in other cities. Alex, please, your thoughts about this. So thank you for having me here, and I will challenge you to talk about that in 20 minutes instead of spending 4 hours discussing this class. And the main topic here for the production is that we will have this presentation as a material for us to disseminate, and so that it can become a focal point for people who are interested in this area. So we are organizing the events, but whenever the topic needs further attention, then we will get some time for it. Well, I'm sorry, organizers, fellow organizers, please, let's use the time the way you think is more productive, so that we can give you further 20 minutes, so that we can convey the message that we have to convey our audience. Because in addition to the public that we have here, we'll transmit that online, that will be recorded, and we'll disseminate that throughout the entire digital ecosystem, because this is a powerful and very important message that we have to give you. Yes, I believe that the greatest message is we should understand what this entire framework of standards and rules bring in terms of opportunities to entrepreneurs in innovations. So you said one of the axes of innovations, which is technology, but we have many innovative initiatives that will go even into the production sector and also the traditional areas. And we should modernize and innovate. Modernize is the thing that we do, because things will evolve. And innovate is doing things in such a way that that they have never been done before. And we have a production sector, industry, service, and commerce. And this is something that you addressed already. And this public might be distant from people's lives, but governments are the greatest purchasers of services everywhere. And Microsoft is present in the government of the United States, and also Petrobras, Vale have their governmental relationships area, because the government buys a lot from these companies, and this opportunity is available to innovative companies. And perhaps these types of might be recent or even traditional companies that are getting into an idea of standing out of the competitor. But just let me add that in this entire process with these attractions, we have the role of having this technological bias in an authority that create those milestones, so that we can keep our eyes open to what will ensure the sustainability of what has been implemented. We should create the regulations that will use this public environment where the innovations take place, so they have this physical room to develop. And whenever public initiative has a good idea, we'll knock on our doors for a specific regulation, or ask for other regulations to make their way clearer. And therefore, we are supporting decision makers and mentors of public management, and they will be guided by this new technology-driven profile. Yes, and I put myself available to the public here. I represent the ICT in Inova Brazil, which is a technology institute and technology center. We are a private institute that is regulated within the entire science and technology framework from the Ministry of Science and Technology. And that allows us to have a reach for some actions that might not be available to companies or to some other institutes, but the work that we are presenting here, and we are getting right to the heart of the thing, and that is the São Paulo case, which is led by Humberto. However, the ICT supports technically state governments like the state of the Paraná's government, and therefore we are able to collaborate with the development of opening the doors of innovation to the private sector along with the demands of public demands. Yeah, you've just closed a deal with the technological hub of São José dos Campos. Yes, and it was the São José dos Campos Technological Hub organizations is the organizations that help the local government to certify itself as a smart city based on the ISO technology or ISO certification rules, and is the only city in Brazil that is smart certified, ISO certified. And São Paulo is now looking for this same ISO certification based on international standards. And that is also led by our Innovation and Technology Secretariat, so that we can activate this innovation ecosystem and provide that qualification for the city that São Paulo might turn into a reference not only for concrete actions, but also in its qualification as an ISO certified city. And this design was developed some years ago, and I spent 3 years at the United Nations in New York related to digital technologies for governance. But within this framework, we represented the market shift according to what local governments are doing to other cities around the world. And this Sunday we are heading to Barcelona, attending a huge event, and this case will be presented at this event according to the same standards that we are presenting here. And let me just make things clear here, because you quoted things involving hiring or procurement by the government. So that is already available. We do have the bid laws, we have the startup milestones for smaller companies, which have a expedite procurement procedure, and that was the very good new thing about this process. But the impact of these startups is fairly smaller than the larger companies and also of governments. But the great start here is the ICT, and I would like you, Alex, to explain what the ICT is all about, because as I understood from Humberto's words, it is something that relates to the private sector that's coming in this project, and the public power invests money, which is outside of the bidding process, but that involves an innovative project. Like that involves risk. If that is successful, then that would escalate the service or the product, because that will make some public policy. And as we are talking about health at the SUS, then millions of people will be using a tool that had been created along with the private sector and with public money, but always based on a project.
Could you bring this contour? Yeah, your synthesis was phenomenal. You summed up in 40 minutes what would take a long time. I guess you can move forward because there's rather great detail over there. The first point is exactly Smith is responsible inside the City Hall of São Paulo to perform this work of creating this housing under the municipal place. We are producing what is about to come out. 2 municipal decrees. One is the municipal regulatory mark, which is the innovation for the municipality. Though that are 2 superior because it creates the capacity for customization, for induced demand inside the municipality with the traits for that municipality, for a city that is among the 10 biggest in the world. It's a large metropolis. It's not easy to articulate it. So these 2 decrees, one is the regulatory mark that consolidates federal laws, and the Sandbox program, that brings forth the capacity to transform the city into an experimental area, which enables innovation and changes the context of what is there regarding hiring housing, that I have to hire a solution. So the government has to specify a solution to be purchased. In the regulatory mark and the Sandbox program, we change that. It's not longer the solution, it's the problem. Okay, so I have this problem, so you deal with it. So we could have 2, 3, 10 creative solutions, and the government may hire all of them with involved risk. And not, also to mention that the mark here regarding the startups, but evidence that strategy here, we are aligning the startup law and the ICT mark. Let me just try to talk about in another way about Sandbox, because some people here are not in the legal area and sometimes they don't have the whole context of what Sandbox is and its regulation. Yeah, regulatory Sandbox is a norm that authorizes you to test within a period of time into a certain specified space a certain technology or business model that does not exist. Let's try to give you an example here. Let's say a platform for private drivers got into Brazil here today. It had not existed prior. Okay, so we have a business such as this one here. You have to order a driver through your phone. If we had a Sandbox regulatory norm, I could do the following. Look, before I say it is forbidden, or what you are to do or not to do, let's test it out. This is key, not only for solutions we can develop together with BCT or other bodies, but also to stop the drive to try and regulate it. Okay, this you can, this you cannot do. You have to do it this way or not. Because with Sandbox, you have data. It worked because of this. It didn't work because of that. It's not only the MVP, the traditional one we know in tech companies. It leaves laboratory situations, and it arrives at the pain of the market that will be consuming it in a later future. So people do that with scenario projection or achômetros, yeah, like, so they are moved by good intentions. Okay, I have to protect the population, I have to create, so they start regulating or deregulating with no idea of the benefits and eventually the difficulties. So Sandbox allows for a legislator to do it more appropriately. You provide subsidize, and they will say, okay, I really have to demand for them to use a helmet for I don't have to demand airbag because the speed is safe, let's say. So it's micro mobility for the urban area. I can create a lot of you disonerate the industry. You don't create a regulation or a pretentious care with that will provide a great impact in the productive chain, and vice versa. You can enable some eases and for the chain and provide real experiences. Some of the things we are considering beyond that is São Paulo's size. Sometimes I may limit an area in the city center and develop my Sandbox in there. So we're thinking about authorizing the entirety of São Paulo city for Sandbox, because the solution I have for the city center is not the same one that will go to the outskirts. So we're performing some adjustments thinking about that, because you can enable the possibility of thinking that whoever deals with the problem, if it's us in the case, to think, how can I provide a better tool for the manager to have the best decision for public management? And even for those current laws in place that will stop for some reasons obvious so far, the technology will say that this obvious is no longer existent. For those to convince those who established the law and those who inherited the law to notice, okay, we don't have that anymore, so we don't have to stop new economic activities because of obsolete legislations. And sometimes people who did the legislation have no idea that became obsolete and why. a tool such as this will allow for that. And the proximity with the companies ends up being more amicable, because what we have observed in the past 10 years is a lot of companies with disruptive businesses, they break through a pattern, but it's not even innovation. I'm talking about that which broke a barrier, overcame a barrier, and just simply ignored the public power. And it's not that way. And with the regulatory sandbox, you bring that company closer, and the city hall start working with data, and it will build with them. So besides these two regulation instruments, we have the Municipal Fund for Digital Inclusion, and it closes the cycle because the City Hall of São Paulo, due to their own budget, they will have the capacity to mediate and foster. At the same time, it's autonomy that does not depend on the state government and other budgetary tools and the federal government and other ministry bodies. So São Paulo is getting ready to become tractioner with regulative capacity. So municipal decree follows exactly this idea for modernization seen by the mayor, who visited and observed the models and understood the exact nerve point of untying these knots is to bring the productive sector, the entrepreneurship and innovation and academia. And there is a global movement called Triple Alex, which assembles the government with the academic and the productive sector. So this is the genesis of this project way of thinking for São Paulo. For that, the federal mark are unified in the regulatory municipal mark. In one single instrument, the whole regulation of the treasury and attendances will follow a predisposition from the municipality adapted to the municipality with their disabilities and advantages. So leaving that to the federal level, any federal law has to bring the capacity of being transversal. So we'll be legislating to 5,000 inhabitants, as well as a city as big as São Paulo. So we got those federal laws and adapted exactly to a process. After an enormous forum, to tramit a decree such as this one, you have to go through all the secretaries, and each one of them have to pass them. And this has been done. So it was indeed a dense and well done work inside this process. From there, we have to understand that everything was performed looking upon an ecosystem. It was not done looking only for the government and the belly. There's a transversality. So the academia, the people from commerce and industry, everything was talked over with those to understand their demands and the intersection between the municipal power and those stakeholders inside the innovation ecosystem. So from that process, we understood what the big scenario was. What you have, this diagram demonstrates the interrelation between areas from the arrival of an innovation demand and the outing of that demand to society. So I'll bring academia bringing scholarships for doctors and PhDs, the fostering of the government to provide me the money from financial resources inside the public power. I will allow for the government will allow people to have private investment getting benefits from their tributes. Everything is available. However, it's unknown. You have a diagram here, for instance, when people say, okay, I'll be implementing an innovation, I want to access something, but I don't know where. This is a diagram, for instance, that shows all the opportunities for fostering, for research, development, and innovation, which are various. The new regulatory mark for ECTs, as well as startups in some spheres, allow for you to have specific funds for money capturing invested specifically for in innovation. So you have real estate fund, you buy through XP to make money from there. You can also invest money inside a fund and get the dividends in a disruptive, patented or not, taking the advantage of the government. Norway has a sovereign fund, and the citizens are participants, and they invest in millions of companies around the world with that logic. And that's what is a little bit of this lodging here. Have so many legislations. Yeah, we have this one from 1994. So the time of the state is not the time of the people. A law lasted from 94 up until now. Now it's been modernized. So this whole set of housing we're talking about here is the first step of a 1,000 step trip. So people are going to be living with that. So to master that is to change the paradigm, what the canvas is for the new model, what is the new financial planning, looking at this as an opportunity. So sometimes ignorance is bliss, but in this entrepreneur aspect, knowing these resources may distance yourself from competition. Another differential here is imagine this universe of things, the other side of the counter saying, okay, how do I begin? Where do I go? So we're going to make this ready, especially to qualify specific secretaries, assemble other panels such as this, bringing partnerships and diversification, and assemble inside the equipment inside the city hall these ready-to-use systems with all the proper housing and funds, which will be reoriented and but also available that you mentioned, and a highly innovative environment with the equipments available, which projects and contracts we are signing right now with the use of innovation mark, doing our homework and inserting these innovation centers with technological support, with support for information. So those startups that are to come, the big companies, will have the opportunity to create their spin-offs inside this ecosystem, which will be ready for with access to resources and opportunities. We have the ecosystem for the transversal and horizontal connections, and we start activating this immediately, so we don't have to take the 1,000 steps in a longer journey. Let me try to insert this into a more practical, tangible example, because we have a lot of nuances and actors, and we're talking about a diversity of themes. Let's suppose, and this is a subject I've been asking for a while, one of the biggest advances we have had in the city of São Paulo was the bilhete único, which at the time was a true revolution because it brought a lot of benefits to get the ticket, to get discount for the next transport and so on. So up to this day, me as a citizen am not able to recharge that card with any fintech. My digital bank, for instance, whenever I have my bank account and so on. So let's take this matter. Let's suppose we have a fintech and say, okay, I want to create a solution in which I connect all the actors here to send this out to the end, to be able to recharge everyone who's got the wallet app or digital bank, to be able to charge it in a simple manner. But I have to have a fully operable system, so I have to create that. In that way, based on what you're telling me, the private initiative will say, look, I can develop it, the city hall can subsidize this, invest capital in it, with the support of the academia studying the whole environment there via ICT. And if it works, meaning we test it on a small scale, and if it works at the scale, and that company that developed the solution in the past is also benefited from a business perspective, which will have a stratospheric scale. This works for small and big companies.
For instance, if a big technology company wants to solve a specific problem, then that might be fixed according to what is based on the law. And what people know as legislation or law, and what was the technological risk that had been developed might be a solution now. And whenever it scales, it can be purchased by the by the government in scale and provide a solution instead of being a problem. Even if that is a high value, yes, without a limit because it's proven to be disruptive and innovative and highly competent to, I mean, for the problem that was being fixed. It seems shocking because we are used to have the opposite logic because I am developing the solution in this example. So this law states that I will be using the public funds, and that means bringing more benefits to the solution. So whenever you buy a turnkey solution, where is the capacity or the ability of that tool to fix the problem? Yeah, that relates to the constitution of uh, principles of being effectively fixing problems, and in essence of this milestone is promoting the best use of public funds, and eventually that what seems absurd means, if compared with the scale which was minimum, then I managed to have our ROI not only in terms of money, but also achieving the quality of the service. If we think about that, we'll see that the logic is in there, not the lack of a logic. Till we get there, the diagrams show our incentives here in direct financial support. One of those cells is the venture capital, where we have the ceremonial venture capital, which is a tip of an iceberg. We have an entire universality to explore. Like we could talk about angel, pre-seed, seed, and so. And these ways could be even easier and considerably more accessible. So the law of ICTs, which is the new law that supersedes the 2004 law and a sequence of other minor laws, it has very important traits. But here it states that we have 12 new possible instruments to promote incentives to innovation development. So out of those we have participation funds, corporate interest, technological investments. We have investments also in research and development, but that's not only focused on large corporations, but also on small to middle-sized businesses. So this Article 19 involves one of the, for instance, one of those 12 resources. How can I use it? I could use that money to buy equipment or to travel or to hire labor. And in item 12, it means the implementation of innovation solutions with the development of micro to small size companies. It's very explicit in the law. It's not only talking about larger private companies, it's involving the understanding of the companies that are involved in the definition of the companies. So the very first topic is that the government can hire companies directly that are involved in technology development and research, which will look research activities in terms of process and service innovation. And based on that, after that has been validated and has made it in the innovative process, then it can escalate the result of those research activities with a contract that would not require a bid process to be approved, because the top, I mean, the limit is the demand. A city like São Paulo can buy a lot, and a 5,000 inhabitant city can just purchase a fraction of that value. And it's not a limitation. We have a logic behind it because when you talked about the startups, those were involved in the beginning of the innovation chain and the initial inception of the projects. But for those issues, we have established a limit for positioning the companies and providing us with understanding. So this material will be available to everyone who is interested in having access to it. But in addition to the advantages that we can understand from this bureaucratization And I would also like to mention the startups which involve these. Inside this startup regulation framework, we have the innovative solution hiring journey for the government. And this journey states that we have a phase of validation, a validation phase, where we are validating the process. So we have the reference terms, which is the specification for you to have a commercial relationship with the government. And this is no longer the specification of the solution itself, and it becomes the specification of the problem. And it allows that anything is presented. So I can present an analog or even a digital solution. I can present, for instance, a solution for the same problem using AI or using a piece of equipment that is mechanical engineering based, and the government can buy either one. And the contract, if it's up to 10 years, we have two limitations for these items. For the technology validation process, which might be a hit or not, it's limited to the 1,800,000 Brazilian reais, and that can relate to the real MVP in terms of actual investment, and then can also be converted through bid process of up to 8 million Brazilian reais. But that makes a project feasible, which does not have to be a venture capital project. And the way outlined by the innovation comes from the inception. It gets to a prototype, and then I come from the prototype to a serious head. To that serious head, I'm supported by the startups. But from that moment onwards, then there's no logic having any limitations, because I'm getting into this pioneer badge and the validation of those processes so that we can get scale from it, and then we insert the product on the market. So this other step is demand oriented. Yes, and in the Science and Technology Ministry, we have a scale called TRL, which is a nasal technology that measures the maturity of the innovation, that ranges from 0 to 9. And those incentives are right here. So the idea is to induce through SMIT innovation, and we have developed a roadmap to get here. It's an extensive one. We have an entire team behind it, led not only by Humberto, but also by the legal and project guys, and with the participation of the private sector as well. And now São Paulo has a very important business case here, stating how a city as big as São Paulo is doing this, which is not being done in cities that are as large as São Paulo. So Alex, Humberto, I thank you very much. And please, would you mind leaving this screen here? Because those who are interested in this sort of investment, because we are here at a very interesting opportunity. Venture capital have become more rigorous in terms of capital intake, and the local government can be an investor, but we are talking about here real smart money, because it will take part of the construction, and this is what good smart money is all about. It involves not only know-how, we have the involvement or the engagement of the investor in the entire process. We have here a great opportunity so that we can learn together and bring that information to the private sector, and no longer be afraid of getting closer to the government because we might have problems. No, we should invert that logic and transform things and co-create these solutions, because if one solution out of 20, then that will be a huge absolute success, because we are talking about millions of citizens in our city of São Paulo. Therefore, I thank you, Humberto, I thank you, Alex, and we should repeat these meetings many, many times. And in the beginning of your speech, we are in the fourth generation of the Industrial Revolution. That means 4.0 management. Yeah, absolutely. We are inverting the entire logic of the game, because it used to be, for instance, at my office, I would be devising a specific public policy to impact millions of people. But here we are opening the doors to the private sector to fix a problem that occurs in the public sphere. And I couldn't be any happier than how I am today to convey this knowledge ahead, so you can rely on me. You can count on me because we'll be talking later, and perhaps we could be together at the MID meeting so that we would be hearing the managers there. Because, Humberto, down there I noticed that you've made some connections with companies interested in getting into this process. So thank you very much, you guys. Again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.